Some unhinged stuff, posted by Trump, but at a greater clip than he usually posts unhinged stuff. And it's probably because the war that seemed over isn't really over, and the strait isn't really open. Also, what lessons can we glean from the defeat of Orban in Hungary? Then we're going to have a special guest come on, talk about drone warfare in Ukraine and the evolution of warfare towards drones generally, as well as a potpourri of other topics. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority.
It's weird to say, but we're at this point now where Trump is posting more and and posting more stuff and more crazy stuff than ever before. This is from this morning. There's a gentleman named Harry Sisson summarized just the past evening of posts from Trump. So 11:34, Trump attacked the Pope. 11:39, he attacked NATO. 12:01 a.m., he posted an article citing one of Epstein's defense attorneys. 12:01 a.m., an article about Biden. 12:02 a.m., an article about a judge. 12:02 a.m., an article about Act Blue. 12:03 a.m., an article about Iran. 12:08 a.m., he announced a Fox News interview. 1:10 a.m., he attacked Pope Leo again with a random meme. 1:11 a.m., he attacked Obama with a random meme. 1:12 a.m., he posted a meme defending his AI Jesus photo of himself that he had previously retracted and said he misunderstood. After Henry Sisson sent out that summary, Trump posted another religious meme of himself. We could throw that one up. Yeah. And that was just last night. We can talk a little bit about his weekend activity in a second. But I think even by Trump standards, he's unraveling.
Yeah, I think pretty clearly. I mean, he's the dog that caught the car, and the car is super unpopular, right? He was talked into the Iran war, and he's been trying to talk it into a victory, and that's not working. He feels the midterm elections bearing down on him. The Epstein file stuff has not gone away and will not go away. And he has always fundamentally believed that the president of the United States should be able to do whatever he or she wants, as long as that president of the United States is him, obviously. And he's finding that he can't do whatever he wants. For most of this term, he's largely been able to do whatever he wanted. And he's encountering real resistance now. I wouldn't say like super substantial resistance in Congress, but he can tell that people aren't just lining up to do what he wants. And I think he's panicking.
Yeah, he's panicking. And also I do think he's degenerating mentally. And, it's not like he was at a great place at the beginning.
He's clearly not sleeping. That's not helping.
Well, I've heard various readouts of the April 12th, 13th tweet storms or truth storms, whatever you want to call them. I won't read this whole other group of tweets, but he tweeted something like 13 or 14 times between 11:34 p.m. and 1:12 a.m. On the nights of April 12th and 13th. And from what I understand, in some cases, he went even past that to all the way to 4:10 a.m. In some cases. So from 9:49 p.m. to 4:10 a.m. And this is where he's posting the AI Jesus photo and all kinds of stuff. And he's mixing random memes that would make you concerned even about the most aggressive uncle you have, with things like news about the blockade. And I don't know, Jason, like these are things, everybody has friends in their life. When you see any erratic posting, you're like, okay, let me call this person. Like we all have those people in our lives. This is beyond anybody in my life, I have to say. Like I have this one friend, he's not listening. So I have this friend, Ben, I won't say his last name. He's a former Republican politician in Mississippi who's a bit older. And I love him very much, but his posts on Facebook are insane often. Even and like they come at these fast clips, and he and my mom argue all the time on Facebook, even though they're somehow friends. Even he, and I would say he's my most erratic Facebook posting friend, has never come close to this. The president of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because I don't even know how much time we can spend on it, because it's been the case and just been getting worse and worse for years. I guess really your point, and it's a good one, is that it is the worst it's ever been. and he's still in charge of the military and can do whatever he wants with it, still has, the nuclear football following him around, and he's not sleeping, and he is sinking deeper and deeper into this fringe world of conspiracy minded people, except for the part, like the real conspiracy, which is like, the Epstein files. And he's like, well, that doesn't matter. But all the rest of this stuff, I guess he's always had an insatiable thirst for validation, because he clearly, at his core, despite having an enormous ego, doesn't really have a healthy sense of self or self-esteem, and never really has had it, which, I mean, if I'm going to keep psychoanalyzing him, I would say that probably was his dad,
Right.
And so that hole is there. And we've always known that. And if you look at the way he posts, like the Jesus meme and stuff like that, it's really all about what he's trying to do. Is he's on his phone trying to find things that affirm him, validate him, or vindicate him. And then he shares those things. And, a politician sharing things that are self-aggrandizing is not, news at 11. But the fact that the politician himself, while he is president of the United States, is foregoing sleep to constantly search for those things is really concerning for the rest of us.
Yeah, I think, you want to elect people president who, are the best version of ourselves, right? But I think when history is told, I guess when the bots are relaying our history to each other, because we might not be around for much longer, but they'll be like, okay, this is a perfect distillation of the pathologies of life in 2026. And the guy they elected president is probably the purest, most harmful version of a psychosis that's affecting society at large. We just happen to have a guy in the White House who has less self-control than anybody I know, which is kind of scary. And yeah.
Well, it's also kind of a good argument for the point people make about having presidents that are really old, because
Yes.
one of the things that does happen to you when you get older, in addition to general declination, is isolation. Because, what did Obama have going for him, among, other things? And he was a pretty disciplined guy who didn't go down these rabbit holes. But
Right.
on top of that, if you listen to him and Michelle describe what life was like in the White House, they had grade school and then middle school, and I think by the end, like early high school girls at that time, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
they were in college by then. But like at night, when he would finish work, he would go and he would have a family dinner, and like he did what
Yes.
other people in their 40s and 50s, or maybe even early 60s, are doing. They're spending their time with their family in the evenings, which, for one thing, connects you a little more to the normal American and, experience and what people are looking for from you, but also keeps you from, like, I think it's really important that leaders have a world outside of work. And Trump works from home.
Yes.
And I don't think it's any secret that that the first lady and the president, it doesn't appear to be like a big love affair. Okay.
No.
Like, I don't,
Separate bedrooms.
I don't think they're having dinner together every night. Meaning I don't think he has a dinner partner every night. And I think it's him and his phone. And just look, obviously I have a lot of problems with Trump, and so do you. And those problems are endless, and they're existential, and they are all those things. But also on a human level, there are days for me where, like, if Diana's traveling or something like that, where I end up with a lot more screen time, and I am mentally not as healthy on those days. And I'll tell you what else I'm not. Like, if I spend an entire, like, if my calendar, for whatever reason, like if a bunch of things cancel and I don't have anything going on and I already worked out, I might find myself sitting on the couch and staring at my phone for 2 hours. I can promise you that I'm going to be a little bit less good of a dad that night.
Yeah.
And
this is
he's less good of a president as a result.
Yes.
I mean,
it's funny because actually last week, this is like to show our relationship. I think you and I, from a distance, often have a good handle on what's going on with the other, even just from like little digital clues. And I texted you the other day because I myself was like going down my own rabbit hole on the internet and doing exactly what you're describing. And I wound up on this video of the actor who plays Jack Reacher for no reason. Like, and I click on the comments, which is something I never do. And then I see you trolling is a hard word, but you're the first comment I see because you're the most prominent person to comment on this video. And you're kind of trolling this actor. And I texted you, and it was really like me talking to myself because I'm like, one, why am I looking at this video? Why am I looking at this comment? And why the hell is Jason trolling this actor? I'm like, this is like a multi-level problem.
Here's an end to that story that you don't know, that you are responsible for, which is you made me go back. I had not read any of the comments to my comment. And so after you texted me that, I went back and I looked. And clearly, like, a lot of people were like, dude, he's not saying what you think he's saying. And I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, like, I think I was unfair to this dude. So then I went and I researched him further and I was like, oh, I kind of like this dude. Like, he's spoken out and said some good things. So then I went back and replied to my own comment as a result of you bringing that to my attention. And I, sort of the Shaq meme, I said, I was not familiar with your game. I apologize.
I don't mean it's always a dangerous thing to say you like somebody you don't know that well, but he got in an altercation with a neighbor that was very interesting. I'll just leave it at that. And I thought he was in the right about it. It was a big internet thing. But I think there's a larger point here. David Plouffe wrote a piece in the New York Times, I think a week or two ago, about how the next candidate for president is going to have to run a full-time content shop. And I actually don't disagree with the larger tactical point. But I think there's something you said that I think is at a deep level is going to be important for the party to answer heading into the next presidential election, which is, yes, you need good content. You need to constantly be having the conversation online. But do you want an online president? Like, because I do think some people might want a course correction. They might want somebody who can speak to the longing America has for depth and for connection and presence. And I actually think, yes, you want your staffers to constantly be, relaying what you're doing and all that. But I could see somebody emerging who's almost like a mild Luddite, because I think Americans, like you and me in this conversation, are struggling with this. Like, we don't like the time we waste online. We don't often love the personas that we reflect back online all the time. And if somebody were to show up who brings a different level of radical depth in the real world, who also happens to have a staff around him that can broadcast that really well, I actually think that could be a good combination.
I think it's going to need to be somebody who is fully digitally literate and has a real sense for that world and has a sense for how to move the needle, how to do those things, but has a sense of themselves and isn't so insecure that they constantly need that back and forth. And that's really the fatal part from a character standpoint of Trump. Because clearly, if you look at the way he rose in politics, it was the result of him understanding how to use the media. And that platform in the last, since he came down the escalator 11 years ago, that platform has changed, it has evolved, and he has continued for the most part to understand how to use it, which, for all of his many, like, look, I don't think I need to consistently put a caveat when we say something about it, because everybody knows how we feel. But it is from a technical standpoint impressive for an 80-year-old man to be able to continually do that. But the problem with Trump is not his sophistication in his ability to manipulate the platforms. The problem with Trump is how badly he needs the platforms in order to feel anything positive about himself. Because at the end of the day, I think what he has inside him is the voice of either his father or some other early formative person who told him he wasn't worth a damn or made him constantly prove that he was. And somewhere along the line, in his absolute refusal probably to ever even consider therapy or self-examination, he never reached the important maturation point, particularly for men, of realizing, validation doesn't have to come from the external world. Yeah. And as a result, he has an insatiable thirst for it. And that's the problem.
Well, among the many things to emerge from this weekend was a controversy over Trump posting a meme that seemed to depict him as Jesus, and he wound up taking it down, and he was asked about this meme, and here was his explanation.
Did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and it had to do with Red Cross, as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better. As an example, the 11,000, I understand your husband's going through treatment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He's going through some very serious cancer treatment, so
yes, sir.
This goes a long way.
Yes, sir, it sure does.
So many layers to this video. By the way, do you know what this is? Do you know what the event was, by the way?
Yeah, but tell the people.
So this is some kind of DoorDash.
He's promoting the no tax on tips thing.
Right. So you're imagining Susie Wiles is like, we got to get on message. And that's what they put this event together. And Trump is totally off message. You know, there was a moment in this, and I watched this whole press conference.
So, wait. For those who don't know, the woman he's turning to is a DoorDash gig worker who they've had deliver food, whatever, McDonald's or whatever he eats, to the White House for him so that they can talk about the no tax on tips. And then he's like, I'm pretty much a doctor because this lady in my America is using DoorDash. She's like in her 60s to pay for her husband's cancer treatments because otherwise it'll bankrupt them. So I'm pretty much a doctor.
And there's a whole controversy around that woman, and I think that's not a good use of people's time, is to try to go down that road. It's not worth the. Good. It's definitely a too online conversation, in my opinion. But the focus should be on the president. This whole press conference was off the rails. He actually had one moment where he tried to have message discipline, and he was asked about trans people in sports, which is actually a view he does have. He's been pretty clear about his opinion on that publicly.
A message he wants to be on all the time. And
he sidestepped that. He says, he basically said something like, I don't have an opinion. Or he basically for like a second, he was like, it was message discipline.
Well, what he did was he said, oh yeah, it's a terrible thing. And he turned to her and he was like, what do you think about it? And she's like, I don't have an opinion. I'm just here to talk about tax on tips.
So what's also interesting is, and I'm sure Trump does not know this, that essentially on the same day that he's having this press conference, within a couple of days, his own HHS CDC has blocked approval of a really important cancer drug. And even the Wall Street Journal's opinion page today is criticizing him because all roads seem to lead to this quack Dr. Vinay Prasad, who, without explanation is mucking up the approval of things like cancer drugs. For what reason? Maha, like fill in the blank. Like I can't even construct an argument here. So that's where we are. But obviously the explanation makes no sense. And even Riley Gaines, he's talking about the media, right? Riley Gaines criticized him for that. And then he criticized Riley Gaines, who then apologized to him and said that she loves Trump and looks forward to seeing him in heaven. I mean, it's just a mess.
Really?
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Don't wait too long. But look, I'm trying to, it's very hard to do, but I'm trying to put yourself in his shoes. Let's say for a moment, I do not believe it, but let's say for a moment that Trump saw that and really thought it was him as a doctor. And then if somebody explains to you, no, that was you as Jesus, probably if you're Trump, you still don't care. But then when people are like, no, people are pretty upset. What he did was he deleted it, which is how he thought he screwed up. But then to not be like, yeah, I didn't mean to offend anybody. Like to not even have the ability to say that is pretty incredible, right? It reminds me of, I can't remember who it was, but there's a comedian who has a bit about how, Trump is obviously lying about being religious. And he says, one of the ways is he doesn't go to church. He said, but then again, he could be religious and just not want to go to church because the possibility that Donald Trump is going to sit somewhere for an hour and listen to somebody else talk,
Yes.
and they're not talking about him, which gets to the point, right? Like he's like, that need for validation is so strong and so insatiable that he needs to be bigger than Jesus. Like he needs to be, like the Beatles were kidding when they said it, and he's serious.
I was thinking about this morning, like what's going on with Trump and religion. And I actually think there's no one thing going on. I think depending on the day, if you hooked Trump up to a lie detector test, I do think there are some days where he does think he's anointed by God. And then I think there are some days where if you hooked him up to a lie detector test, what you'd learn is that he's like, oh, I got these suckers. Like, they're doing my thing. Because I do think he probably looks around and is like, holy crap. Like, how did I get here? Like, this is like amazing. Like, how did I withstand all of this? I must be in some way blessed by some higher power. It's like, it's the other half of the narcissism that you're talking about.
Well, let me speak as somebody who has been possessed with the whole "it should be me who is president" thing, because I briefly ran, and the only way to do that is to believe, like, of all the people, it should be me. I'm no longer possessed with that, the belief that of all the people, I would be best. But I never really thought to myself, well, God wants me to do this. But I definitely believed, because I am a believer, I definitely believed and still believe to some degree that, like, we all have some, I go in and out of, like, is there something God wants me to do? I was never like, God wants me to be president, but I was like, well, God gave me certain gifts and like communication and that kind of thing. And like, perhaps I am expected to use those gifts. I never got as far as like, the God told me to run for president thing, but I got close enough to understand a little bit the psychology of it. And I would guess that with Trump, the difference is that he has such a self-centeredness that if he comes to the conclusion that God is protecting him and God wants him to do this and this and this, and it's like, but only me. It's, and like, but God is not concerned with these people, right? Like he kind of has to arrive at that to exercise the sort of behavior in politics that he does.
Well, speaking of God here, and I was going to play some clips, but I think we can summarize these. Trump went after the Pope this weekend as well.
I definitely do, by the way. Please do play the Vance one.
Okay, Trump goes after the Pope, pretty barbed. And, I think most people are probably familiar with this by now. Kind of implies the Pope is left-wing. Fascinating given the Catholic Church's views on abortion. I think it's mostly because of the Pope's opposition to the Iran war, but it's important to note that the Catholic Church is always, lately, we can get into the wars they've supported historically, but, in our lifetime, the Catholic Church is generally against all war. They were against the first Gulf War. Okay, so they just don't like war, right? And Pope John Paul II, who was, Pope during much of our childhood, was kind of a hero to the right, in part because of his abortion stance. So there's always a mixed bag when it comes to the Catholic Church and their politics. I say this as somebody who sits on the board of a Catholic church, Catholic high school. And I wouldn't say we are a left-wing institution. I'll just put it that way. But Trump is, Trump is your for me or against me. The irony of all this is that J.D. Vance has a book coming out in a couple of weeks about his conversion to Catholicism. And so among the many difficult positions that Vance is in this week, and there are many, Orban, the Pakistan negotiations, we'll talk about some of this. Another was that he had to explain Trump's comments in light of his own book tour that's about to start.
Before you play this clip, Jeremy, I just want to tell people, pay attention to the first few words of Vance's answer, because I want to talk about that after, like the first 3 or 4 words.
Hopefully I clipped it properly because I had a time code in there. Jeremy, let's go to this clip.
Sometimes there's going to be agreement, of course, and sometimes there's going to be disagreement. I think that's a reasonable thing, Brett. I don't think that it's particularly newsworthy, but I certainly think that in some cases it would be best for the Vatican to stick to matters of morality, to stick to matters of what's going on in the Catholic Church, and let the President of the United States stick to dictating American public policy. But when they're in conflict, they're in conflict. I don't worry about it too much, Brett. I think it's a natural thing. I'm sure it'll happen in the future, and it's not that big of a deal that it happened in the past.
Well, you're right. Yeah, I watched the full one, and I didn't think about where you clipped it, because what I was going to say is J.D. Vance has a tell when he is asked a question about, and he's frequently, as vice president, asked to comment on things Trump has said or done, or to flat out, he's flat out asked whether he agrees with Trump. What he does is he starts with two words. Well, look. And he does it over and over and over again. And every time he starts out with, well, look, it means, no, I don't like that. And I'd rather not be talking about this. So I'm going to say, well, look, and then I'm going to bring you over to something else and subtly make this about something else. The funny thing about that answer, by the way, is like J.D. Vance is very good at answering questions about the political moment we're in as though it is 20 years ago and we're in a more conventional, less erratic period of American politics. And he's just been asked a question, about like Bush's tax cuts. And so then, like the President of the United States is verbally attacking the Pope. And you have a book coming out about your conversion to Catholicism. And you're like, look, sometimes they're going to agree. Sometimes they're not going to agree. We all got to work together. And it's like, no, dude, this ain't like, the Green New Deal we're talking about. So it's an impressive skill, but people are going to start to pick up on the tell.
Well, this was a bad week for J.D. Vance. He went to Pakistan to negotiate. They failed. Trump was asked about those negotiations and said it doesn't matter. Right after it happened, it says it doesn't matter. While he was at a UFC event, okay, with Marco Rubio, by the way, who's Vance's major competitor for the nomination. And I was listening to Sarah Longwell this morning, who said that Rubio is like, she's picking up things in her focus groups. And this is no reason for comfort for people listening to this, because I think Rubio is a far more formidable candidate. They're all going to have issues given the way this administration has handled business. But she said that in her focus groups, she's picking up a respect for Rubio. And her theory is that the memes of Rubio doing like all these different jobs has kind of like gotten into the bloodstream. That combined with some residual thoughts about him before he joined the Trump administration. So there's this impression that Rubio is kind of like the technocrat trying to keep things on the tracks. So you got Vance going to Pakistan for that. You got Vance campaigning openly for Orban, who loses. And now you've got Vance having to explain away Trump's attacks on the Pope. But that's not it. He also went to a Turning Point USA event in Georgia. Let's play some of the B-roll of that while I'm talking about this, where maybe 20% full. And in that, he was asked about, which spiritual leaders he admires. And he says he recommends this guy, James Dobson, who's a pastor. Just so people are familiar with James Dobson's work, here's what Dobson said after Sandy Hook.
About the fact that our country really does seem in complete disarray.
Yes.
I'm not talking politically. I'm not talking about the result of the November 6th election. I am saying that something has gone wrong in America. And we have turned our back on God. I mean, millions of people have decided that either God doesn't exist or he's irrelevant to me. And we have killed 54 million babies. And the institution of marriage is right on the verge of a complete redefinition. Believe me, that is going to have consequences too. And a lot of these things are happening around us. And somebody's going to get mad at me for saying what I'm about to say right now. But I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I think we have turned our back on the Scripture and on God Almighty, and I think he has allowed judgment to fall upon us. I think that's what's going on.
So to be clear, because there was a bit of a long explanation, he's saying Sandy Hook happened because gay marriage, abortion, etc. This is the guy that JD Vance is wholeheartedly recommending to his very small audience in Georgia.
Yeah, well, and I don't know what to say about that. Like maybe Vance. I would be curious what Vance would even think of those comments. Like I would hope he wouldn't know that. I look, let's talk about the Catholicism thing for a second, and the president, taking issue with Pope Leo and Vance, saying he's converting to Catholicism, but really only agreeing with the church on abortion. Look, I went to Catholic high school. I was the only Jewish kid at a Catholic high school, so I spent 4 years steeped in Catholicism. I mean, you go to mass, you take, every at all times you're having some sort of religion class, right? And most of them, except for like one, I think, all came from the Catholic point of view. So other than one semester in my 4 years, it was always
same here. I did the Catholic high school too.
Yeah. And your point earlier is correct in that, yes, the Catholic Church, I mean, we could do an entire show or multiple shows about their history, and like any long institution has troubled histories, and in many ways their recent history has been troubled. But if you look at like during our lifetime, for the most part, when they have weighed in on ideology and public policy and its connection to the Catholic theology, it has actually been, at least the statements have actually been pretty consistent, right? I mean, I don't know about where you went to high school, where I went to high school, there was the abortion thing. There was like outside the lunchroom, there were big posters during the March for Life period each year of like fetuses, right?
Yes.
And then there you would get, because you had to do community service hours, you could get community service hours for going to Washington and taking part in the March for Life. I obviously did not do that, but like that's how some people got their service hours. So that has been an aspect of Catholicism, and that is what like the right wing has leaned into. Not to mention, and this has shifted a bit and modernized, but the anti-LGBT stance, right? Those kind of went hand in hand. Now, other than that, it's pretty darn liberal, very much anti-death penalty. At my school, the other way that a lot of people got service hours is they had there was a program called Amigos, which I also didn't take part in, so I don't know that much about it, but it was trips to Mexico and working with communities in Mexico and doing like not just evangelical work, but it's actually and like the what he calls, what Trump calls soft in immigration was this basic belief that came from the Gospels in these are the people that are cast out, and so these are our people, and we're supposed to care for these people. And I could go on and on, like the way that you treat the poor, from the pulpit, sometimes I would see the priest talk about abortion, but I would also see that priest talk about feeding the poor and making sure that there are programs to make sure that no one goes hungry and all these things. So they're acting like the Pope has gone off the reservation. From what I can tell, he's just saying Catholic stuff.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about this at length, and I think on the Vance front at this event, what I find interesting, this will be the fourth bad thing that happened to him. The vibes in that room were really bad for Vance and the administration. This is an event organized by their own supporters. And I think it was Turning Point's event. And there were interjections at various points, mostly related to the war, people calling the war a genocide, or they were speaking out against what they believe is a genocide. In some cases referencing, I would imagine, Trump's post about Iran, but probably also talking about Gaza. And he's kind of defensive at various points. And sometimes he's trying to validate certain comments or whatever. And then he goes on this riff, which I was going to play, but I'll just summarize, which is he basically lists the administration's accomplishments, which in his very Vance way, he's picking every economic indicator that he possibly can. He's fishing for the right ones, he's not talking about the consumer sentiment report that just came out of the University of Michigan, which is the lowest in history, or the CPI numbers, which showed nearly a 1% increase month over month. He's just picking random things like, the price of, lug nuts for a spare tire have gone down or something, and then he ends it, because I think he forgets where he is and what his job is, with and that's why we need to take back this country.
Yes, I caught that too. That was wild.
And I'm like, wait a minute. You have the Supreme Court, you have the U.S. House of Representatives, you have the presidency and the Senate. What are you talking about?
You're the vice president.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we need to take back this country from me.
Well, speaking of taking back the country, we just some tremendous news out of Hungary. I was going to do because you were talking about people going hungry, I was going to have a really crass segue, but I feel like that wasn't the right time. Amazing news. I think there's a lot of interesting think pieces. It reminds me of when the opposition in India overperformed by having all this kind of like bartering around. This part of the coalition is going to stand down in this parliamentary seat so that you can maximize the vote, yada yada yada. There's a lot of being said to the fact that the winner was a former member of Orban's coalition and all of that. And I think we would need hours, I think, to untangle all of this. And it is a parliamentary system, so it allows for a lot of different strategizing and different alliance politics. But I do think what I find most important about all of this is that even in a country where they were way beyond where we are, like the opposition leader couldn't even appear on TV until he won. Like, he was banned from going on TV. It was way worse than anything we've been experiencing here. They still were able to win.
That's actually quite inspiring. It's a great point. It also says a lot about what the Trump administration has done to hurt our standing in the world, right? Because we know that they really broke a norm here when Vance went to Hungary and openly campaigned for Orban in the way that you would do if it was like a midterm election and you had a Senate race you really wanted to win. You would send the vice president. But we typically do, we've done things like, American presidents right before an ally is up for an election have gone and like done something with them. Like, gone and done a press conference about their work together, but never done a rally and said, like, you got to vote him back in, that kind of thing. So they did that, and then he still got trounced. It may have even hurt him more. And I think if you look at that and you pair it with the fact that the negotiations, yes, Vance is taking the lead up from the U.S. side on these negotiations with Iran, but it's happening in Pakistan because the prime minister of Pakistan seems to be the neutral arbiter between the two, who's calling the sides together. And my entire lifetime, your entire lifetime, Ravi, and I think probably anybody listening to this, the United States has been the one, or maybe Britain, maybe a couple others, who, when there are two countries that are belligerent toward one another and are, and are at loggerheads and can't seem to get out of it and can't seem to get out of a cycle of violence or leading up to violence, the United States has frequently been the country where the leader of our country will go in and try and negotiate a peace and broker it. And this is the first time I can remember where we are truly the belligerent one, us and Iran, you could argue, are both, I suppose, and Israel. And the prime minister of Pakistan has to step in and be like the sober adult. I think that says so much about what this administration has done to our standing, combined with breaking a norm like they did with Orban, and he still gets crushed.
It's amazing. I mean, and we could point back to like Vietnam era stuff and all of that and interventions around the world.
Yeah, I guess that's where you'd have to go.
But even that was like less chaotic. It was evil, but it was like part of some kind of strategy that was wrong. Well, we're going to take a break and we're going to hear from our friend Ken Harbaugh. Before we do, we're in the last 24 hours of voting for the Webby Awards, and I created this podcast about the 20 years of transformation of the education system in New Orleans, partnered with Midas to get the word out about that. We are nominated for 2 Webby Awards this year, finalists, and in one of them, in the People's Choice voting, we are number 2 right now. And so if I know anything about the Midas Mighty, it's that you show up in numbers. So we put the link to the voting at the top of the description on YouTube. I'm also going to drop into the comments right now on YouTube. If even 10% of the people listening to this podcast vote, and it's really easy to do, you could do it with your Gmail account. It takes a second. Then we'll go from 2 to 1, and we'll overtake a podcast about NASA. Like, those dweebs don't need another award. So vote for this. Vote for Where the Schools Went. It's a podcast about the New Orleans school transformation. You'd be doing me a huge favor and validating the work that a tremendous team did, including Midas, to put out a really important podcast. So I'll put that there. Vote for Where the Schools Went. We'll be right back with Ken Harbaugh. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMSS offers a straightforward way to handle it. HIMSS connects you with a licensed healthcare provider online, giving you simple access to legitimate ED treatment options from home, no awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines. Just complete a simple online intake, and a provider will review your information to determine if treatment is right for you. And if subscribed or prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door in discreet packaging. And that includes sildenafil, also known as the generic for Viagra, and it's available through HIMSS at 95% less than the brand name version. And if that option isn't right for you, there are additional treatment options available so that you can find what works best for your body. And it's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority for your free online visit. hims.com/majority. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark for Viatris Specialty LLC. HIMSS is not affiliated with or endorsed with Viatris. Guys, if your hair isn't playing like it did in your 20s, it might be time for a real comeback, not another workaround, because throwing on a hat isn't a strategy. Nutrafol supports healthier hair from within. It's physician formulated, clinically tested, and recommended by dermatologists, giving you a clear, legitimate plan so that you can stop covering up and start showing up with confidence. Nutrafol now offers hair growth supplements tailored to men at every age, because the root causes of your hair thinning over time, and your routine should too. Nutrafol for men ages 18 to 49 will help improve your hair growth and achieve thicker, fuller hair in 3 to 6 months. And the new Nutrafol for men 50 plus is the first and only hair growth product specifically formulated for men 50 plus. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand and is trusted by over 1.5 million people. And you can feel great about what you're putting into your body, since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard and third-party certification for supplements. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track. Plus, with Nutrafol subscription, you could save up to 20% and get added perks to support your hair growth journey. Start Nutrafol today and make that hat optional. Visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code MAJORITY for $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping. To find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spell Nutrafol.com, promo code MAJORITY. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code MAJORITY.
Starting something new isn't just hard, it's terrifying. So much work goes into this thing that you're not entirely sure will work out, and it can be hard to make that leap of faith. Trust me, I know. When I started this podcast, I wasn't even sure what I was doing. What if nobody listens? What if I make a fool of myself? What if nobody buys these products? Now I know that I was right in believing in myself and launching the podcast despite all the fears and the hesitations. It also helps when you have a partner like Shopify on your side. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands that are just getting started. Get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. Best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. And what if I get stuck? Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/majority. Go to shopify.com/majority. That's shopify.com/majority. All right, we're going to bring on Ken Harbaugh. Let me introduce him. Ken is a former Navy reconnaissance pilot, president of Midas Touch Studios, and founder of Valor Media Network. Over the past few years, he is embedded with Ukrainian forces on Kiev rooftops with mobile gun crews on the shores of the Black Sea and at the front as Russian FPV drones attacked his position. That frontline reporting has been featured in The Atlantic and elsewhere. That reporting also produced Drone Hunters of Kherson, a documentary film from Midas Defense and Valor Media Network that follows the Ukrainian crews defending their country against relentless Russian attack. The film makes the case that Ukraine's counter-drone expertise is the most operationally relevant military knowledge in the world right now, and that the United States has been too slow to seek it. With American soldiers now dying from the same cheap suicide drones Ukraine learned to defeat, the argument has never been more urgent. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. How are you?
I always answer that question with, I am great when adjusted for current events.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think we got to be more honest in our response to that. My answer is, how honest do you want me to be?
Yeah. So, okay. What prompted you to decide to go to Ukraine? We'll get to the film in a moment. How long ago was that? Tell us the story.
Yeah, well, the first time I went was to screen a film, Against All Enemies, and the Kyiv Film Festival had asked to show it, and I was honored that they even asked. I said, can I come talk about it? They were shocked to hear that because it was shortly after the invasion, and they rolled out the red carpet. And my experience in just that short visit to Kyiv a couple of years ago made me really appreciate viscerally the stakes. I mean, I knew it in an academic sense that Ukraine is the front line against Russian revanchism and expansionism, but talking to the folks in the fight, and I did end up leaving Kyiv and going to the close to the front, not as close as I've been since, but talking to some of the tankers, and at the time it was a lot of artillery and anti-tank guys. It just bonded me to this cause in a way that reading about it can't. And I've been back many times since then. And the relationship with the drone hunting teams has taken those years to build, because they don't just want anyone out walking a patrol with them along the highway of death in Kherson. So it was that last trip where I finally got to go out on the front line as the Russian FPVs are coming in and see how these guys defend their country. It's extraordinary.
What because this is something that has interested me for a while. I think it's super relevant to the moment we're in, but also just as a former soldier, I'm very interested in it. What percentage of this war is drone warfare now?
I mean, it's virtually all drone warfare now. When you look at, there are various ways to measure it, but if you just look at the number of casualties along the front, about 1,000 Russians are dying every day along the front, and the vast majority of those are being killed by drones. I mean, part of that is the Russian way of war. I've heard or read about Russian commanders describing their own infantry as human radar, because they will literally send waves of soldiers towards Ukrainian positions, and wherever the bodies pile up, that's the Ukrainian strong point. And it's drones that are taking out the majority of those Russians at this point, which is extraordinary when you think about how quickly that evolution has taken place. We've upended over 100 years of dogma in warfare, where the main system for delivering firepower cheaply and effectively downrange was artillery. Now a drone, a cheap mass-produced drone that is very high tech, is actually cheaper than a 155 millimeter artillery round. And it is more deadly when used the way the Ukrainians use it. A year ago, it was artillery that was killing the most people. Now it is by far the FPV drones that the Ukrainians are flying.
What's the kill radius on one of these? I'm not trying to get overly military, but like,
it's an important question, because I get a lot of feedback from some of the videos of the guys I'm embedded with shooting down drones with rifles. You would be shocked at how much advice Americans have for Ukrainians who are doing it the right way. But they're like, why don't they use a shotgun? The kill radius of one of these drones is is beyond the effective range of a shotgun. So these guys have to shoot down these pigeon-sized drones, each carrying about a kilogram warhead, traveling at 100 kilometers an hour. Their terminal phase is just a couple seconds. You have 30 seconds to hear or spot the thing, and then the last phase is just a few seconds where you're going to engage it. And with the fiber optic controlled drones, there's no electromagnetic signature, there's no radio signal from the drone back to the operator. So there's no way to detect it other than to be out in the open, looking for it and listening for it, and then engaging it at distance with a rifle. It is extraordinary marksmanship, and I've tried to do it in the simulator. I'm good about 2 out of 10 times. These guys have to hit it down 100% of the time or they're dead. And the casualty rate in these drone hunting crews is pretty darn high.
That's wild. Ravi, I'm just going to keep asking these questions unless you want to jump in.
Yeah, well, I'm so curious about, I interviewed Dexter Filkins about this subject a couple months ago, and what he was talking about was like this underground industry within Ukraine where they've distributed this network all around the country to manufacture these drones. And that it was basically built to be so distributed that if the Russians take out any one part of their apparatus, everything else can function. What's interesting that's happened since, obviously, is now the Ukrainians are in high demand around the world. And you're hearing about the Saudis and the Emiratis or whoever, I might have some of those details wrong, like wanting to learn from the Ukrainians and pull that knowledge. Are the Ukrainians leveraging this with the U.S. or the Middle Eastern countries?
With the Middle Eastern countries, for sure. They just signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with the Saudis, and the manufacturing infrastructure is distributed for another reason. Part of it is hardening to resist constant Russian attacks. Part of it is just how it evolved. I mean, some of these drone factories started in grandma's kitchen. Literally. I've seen some of the ones that are literally underground, close to the front, and they're being run with 3D printers. I mean, the explosives can't be printed, and some of the electronic components aren't, but the things that are printed at the last minute based on the next day's target sets, those happen at the front within hours of them being used. And that's another fascinating aspect of Ukrainian innovation. It's not just technology, it's tactics and economics. They will adjust their target sets by the hour, print different kind of warhead triggering mechanisms for those unique or for those new kinds of target sets, and the troops at the front will have them the very next day. You want to know how long an innovation cycle like that would take in the US? Probably years, if not decades, literally, between like the project ideation to the testing to all the oversight to everything else. Ukraine is doing it within days, sometimes hours.
Why don't the Russians have, why haven't they built the equivalent infrastructure, or have they, and it's just less important for them given they're not defending their territory?
I mean, the Russians are sending a massive amount of drones towards Ukraine. If you're just talking about the big drones, like the Shaheds and the missiles, it's hundreds every night. If you include the FPVs, those little pigeon-sized first-person view drones, it's thousands every day. I think during the Orthodox Easter ceasefire, Ukraine registered over 1,000 violations of the ceasefire, and I have to believe that that was mostly these small FPV drones that the Russians are sending across. And by the way, in a place like Kherson, they're not going after military targets. The UN has actually described the Russian tactics in Kherson as a depopulation effort. They are striking civilian targets all across Kherson, but principally the neighborhoods just north of the Highway of Death, to terrorize the civilians and to try to change the politics on the ground by depopulating these civilian communities.
So basically, their drones are going looking for targets and are settling for civilian targets, whereas from your description, the Ukrainian drone operators are selecting military targets, presumably with reconnaissance drones.
That is absolutely true. The Ukrainians focus on military targets. They'll fly a Mavic overhead where the Russians really can't detect it. They can't see it. It's hundreds of meters up. And then their FPV drones will go in low based on what the Mavic is pointing out, and they'll take out military targets, which is it's an operation to see. It's incredible. The Russians, on the other hand, they're taking out civilian targets not as backup targets, but as principal targets because of this intention to depopulate Kherson. And they post these videos on Telegram to kind of brag about them. The reason we know that they're blowing up old ladies walking back from the market with their shopping bags is because they're posting the videos, and they're calling them human safaris because they are hunting people across Kherson. And the only way to defend the civilians of Kherson from that kind of attack is to put yourself as one of these drone hunters between the Russian lines and the civilian communities, which, by the way, the Russians would never, ever do. They would never risk their best fighters to defend civilian neighborhoods like the Ukrainians are being forced to do.
So let's talk about the defensive tactics, because this is very relevant to what American troops are facing right now.
Yeah.
From the way you're describing it, with the kill radius that's outside the range of a shotgun, I think that conventionally, if people are thinking about drones as basically flying IEDs, which is pretty much what they are, but really, really powerful ones, then people imagine it to be more like an IED, which has to be pretty close. Like a buried IED has to be pretty close in range to its target, because its kill radius is not as wide. It's a little more like closer to like a grenade. And so, but it sounds like that's not the case. So it's not like you just put a hard roof over something and you're good, because it sounds like they could detonate 30, 40 feet from it and very potentially penetrate through that hard barrier.
Well, there are a couple different threats that the Americans face right now in the Gulf. Let's talk about the FPV thing, which would have been a massive threat had we invaded Park Island or Bandar Abbas. And a kilogram of explosives doesn't sound like a lot, but I've seen an FPV with a kilogram of explosives, no shrapnel, fly through the window of a building where Russians were hiding and literally lift the entire roof of that building off. It sends out a blast wave that will kill anything within 30 to 40 feet. Add shrapnel to that, and it's incredibly deadly. It's like the biggest grenade you can throw.
Yeah.
But the Americans right now,
like, you add shrapnel, it's more like a claymore.
Yeah, that's a great example. And you don't take out a claymore with the distance of a shotgun. It's too lethal at range. But what killed those 6 Americans in Kuwait in the opening phase of the war was a Shahed. And given the distance that the Iranians have to travel to attack American positions, it's going to be missiles or drones like Shaheds, which the Ukrainians have also perfected in taking down. They're taking down these $20,000 Shahed drones. Initially designed in Iran, the Russians are manufacturing them in country now, but these Shaheds are cheap, plywood and carbon fiber drones with 500-pound warheads, cost between $20,000 and $50,000 each. The Ukrainians are taking them down with $2,000 anti-drone drones or with rooftop gun positions, while the Americans and our allies in the Gulf are shooting $1 million interceptors at them and still missing. That's not an economic equation that ever works out in the defender's favor, especially when you think about the fact that the Iranians don't even need to get to the target. If they soak up $2 or $3 million interceptors with a $20,000 attack drone, they've already won.
Wow. Yeah. Ravi, you got any other questions for Ken before we ask him what else he wants to talk about?
Well, I feel like we could talk about this forever, but one obvious question is, we spend more than, always forget the statistic, but some insane number of other countries combined on our military. And, one thing that Filkins talked about is like, a lot of that could be obsolete in this new era of warfare. Yeah. And he profiled Palmer Luckey and some of these new companies that are trying to catch up in the U.S. Like, what is the status of that? I know that we have a lot of reasons to be pessimistic, but is there any sense that our Pentagon, either through our partnership with Ukraine potentially, which I know is uneasy and subject to the whims of the guy on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, or through different Pentagon spending. Like, is there any sense that we're starting to get more urgent about this?
I don't have a lot of confidence in this Pentagon with the leadership it has right now. I mean, look at how badly they have managed the war with Iran, the fact that we didn't have minesweepers in theater when the war kicked off, the fact that we didn't have anti-drone protection that could have saved the lives of those 6 Americans. The Ukrainians have been begging us for years to listen, to help us. The Europeans are listening, especially the Eastern Europeans. You have Ukrainians embedded with Eastern European militaries, teaching them how to fight the drone threat, especially after Exercise Hedgehog last year, in which a small group of Ukrainian drone operators wiped out the entire NATO force in this exercise. NATO is paying attention. But for a variety of reasons, the U.S. still refuses to really embrace the Ukrainians and accept their help. And my fear, my suspicion is that it's as much out of pride as anything else. The idea that Trump would have to accept help from Zelensky, I don't think he can countenance that.
Yeah, it's ego.
Yeah. Well, Ken, thank you so much, man. Where can folks find your work?
Substack is where I'm directing everyone to these days. Obviously got the show on the Midas Touch Network, but Substack seems to be maintaining its independence. I love that. I want to help them out. And I'm at the Ken Harbaugh show on Substack, heading back to Ukraine in a few weeks to report on the resistance in some of the occupied territories. And that is a story that the people in those occupied territories are desperate to get out, because of this narrative in the West and in the U.S. especially, that those territories are gone. They should be written off. Our president even said, well, Putin fought for it. He should keep it. That's kind of like saying Hitler fought for Paris, therefore he should keep it. The people in Ukraine, in the occupied territories, don't feel that way at all. And I think that is a really important story to tell.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for joining us. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, be safe.
Man. Thanks. See you guys.
Be safe over there. All right, see you, man.
I think you know this. I went to law school with Ken. He was like what you call an unconventional student. He was probably younger, but definitely than I am now. But he felt like, the grown up. He was fresh out of his service, and yeah, it's great to see him going out there.
He's done a lot of different things, and I look forward to seeing that film. All right, before we go, what's going on with you?
We haven't done a one for us in forever, man, because we haven't been at the end of an episode. No, I'm back in New York, and I'm moving back to Manhattan. I'm in the middle of getting a place because I'm still going back and forth to Italy, and I told you about a project that I'm working on that I'll probably share more about on the show at some point. But I'm like, I haven't had an apartment since the fall, so I was like, I just need a place, whether I'm going to be in New York every day or not. So I got a place in Manhattan, in my old neighborhood that I used to live in, Manhattan, right next to this woman who used to run an Italian restaurant in Soho that closed during the pandemic, who's somebody I've been cooking with in this journey. And she and I have been collaborating on dinners for a while. She and her husband lived next door, and they were like, the apartment right next to us has opened up. So I'm taking that. And so now I'll have cooking buddy, and moving back to my old neighborhood. And it's perfectly situated. So I'm like close to the Brooklyn side, so I can visit all my best friends over there, close to the ferry, so I can go visit my parents and stuff. So it's pretty awesome. So I'm going to officially make the move in a couple of weeks. So I'm pumped about that.
That's cool. Good for you. I am turning 45 on May 4th.
Amazing.
And what is funny about that is, I can't remember if I said this on here before, but it is also the first day of my men's amateur baseball season. I will, as most summers, I will play roughly 50 games of actual baseball, not softball this summer. And I play in 3 like age divisions, and so this is the first day of the 40 and over. I also play in the 18 and over and the 30 and over, and it's my birthday, the first day of games, and my daughter, who's 5, has loves to plan birthday parties, and had tried to plan this party for me that involved Frozen themes and Disney princesses, and and I've been politely saying,
Just go with it.
Well, I'm sure I'll have to wear a costume that day. But I have told her, like, it's not really what Dad wants. And so finally Diana was like, we were all in the car together, and she was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what I want? I want my wife and our 2 kids to come to my baseball game the way we all go to all True's games. I said, and I want to have a 12-year-old birthday. I said, I want y'all to bring a cookie cake. And when the game is over, I want my teammates and I to sit around eating a cookie cake on my birthday. And so that's what's going to happen. And I'm very excited about feeling, because when I play baseball, I don't feel 12, but I feel like 17, 18. I feel much younger, and it'll be fun to just be 12,
Oh my God. Well, happy birthday. I always forget. We're always at the same time. My birthday is right before yours. And
happy birthday.
You remind me that my grandmother, she might be listening, turns 90 years old tomorrow. Happy birthday, Grandma. She's still at it.
Happy birthday, Grandma. My great uncle, who frequently listens, just turned 99.
The famous uncle.
Yeah, John just turned 99. He listens.
Well, hopefully you and I have many years ahead of us with those genes.
That's the plan.
One day you'll be at midlife. Like well. Maybe 10 or 15 years from now, we'll have a midlife crisis for you.
That's the goal, is to put it off that long.
Well, it's good to see you, man. It's good to get through a full episode together. It's been a second since we both did here. Well, awesome. Everybody who's listening, if we're still voting, still open, go check out where the schools went. Vote for us over there. I guess I could take us out. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today. We'll see you next week.